So by now you should have 4 pieces of data in your drive. You should have a basin outline, a DEM, your NHD plus hydrology, hydrography data, and your NLCD land cover data. Let's open up ArcGIS Pro and take a look. So you can always search for ArcGIS Pro from the start window. You will also have a folder over here. This is my personal PC. You'll have a folder over here called CEE software, and it will appear right at the top of that. So I'm going to open ArcGIS Pro, and it's thinking, and it likes to take its time. And this is the program we're going to be using for spatial analysis. So I'm going to pause this video when something takes a little while, just to keep it succinct. So just know some of these processes are going to take a little while. When you start ArcGIS Pro, you should get this image. You're going to click on Map. You're going to want to name this CE 352 Project 1, and I added an underscore here as a reminder. I'm going to tell you this about 10 times in this video. No spaces in your ArcGIS file names. The location is, it's telling you where it's going to be stored. And this is trying to store it on the C drive. We don't want that. We want to put it on our thumb drive. So go ahead and navigate to your drive. I'm going to go to CE352 Project 1. And I'm going to say OK. And it's telling it to create a new folder for this project, which I am very happy to have it do. I'm going to say OK, and it's going to create that project. And it's going to open the new map. And let me tell you, ArcGIS Pro is pretty cool. ArcMap has nothing on ArcGIS Pro, and ArcMap is what I learned to do all my spatial analysis on. So again, I'm just zooming to Pennsylvania because I know that's where my data is going to go, but I want to give you a very quick tour of ArcGIS Pro. Everything is run from these ribbons up at the top. So we have the map ribbon, which has information on adding data. That's going to be pretty useful to us. Selecting things, we're going to talk about that. Measuring is very useful if you need to get distances. Locating information, searching, coordinate conversion. Insert, we will use when we turn your spatial representations here into an actual map layout. So stay tuned, but these two tools over here are going to be really useful. Analysis has the toolbox, which is something we're going to want to use. I'm going to click on that right now, and it's going to appear. You're going to have favorite tools, but what you really want are toolboxes over here. I'm going to move that slightly out of the way. View has information on symbology. It actually has a color vision simulator, which is pretty cool. Edit, we will very briefly use. You can move things around if you need to. And the rest of these, imagery, share, and others, will appear and we'll use as we need. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is add your data. So I'm going to go to my thumb drive, my CE352 folder, my project 1, and I'm going to add my basin outline. And so I'm going to go into my layers folder, and I'm going to grab my watershed and my point. And if you notice, they both have different images right there. They're telling you that these are 2 different types of files, 2 different types of what we call vector files in ArcGIS, vector data sets. So my global watershed is a polygon, and my global watershed point, or my outlet, is a point. I can just rename that in here. It doesn't rename the file, but it just makes it easy for me to remember. And if I want to make this hollow so I can see what's behind it, I can click on that color area. I get a symbology window that appears, and I can say, give me a black outline. Let's say I don't like the black color and I want to make it something a little more poppy. I can actually click on properties and change the color. I can change the width, and I tell it apply, and it does it. And then I can close that when I'm done. So the second piece of data I want to add is my DEM. So I'm going to go to DEM. I'm going to say, give me that TIFF. I'm going to say okay. And if it comes up with something about statistics or pyramids, go ahead and say yes. And it's going to take a little while to load it. But when it does, you're going to see why I made that outline red. The first thing you want to do is make sure your digital elevation model extends the full size of your watershed. And take a look at that. We have a much bigger digital elevation file than our watershed, and that's okay. Again, this blue point down here is the watershed outlet and is the location, quote unquote, of your project site. You need to choose a side of the river. And I'm just going to change the name of this to DEM for my own purposes. All right, so let's delineate a watershed. Over in toolboxes, you're going to scroll down until you find spatial analyst tools. You're going to extend that with a little arrow and go down to hydrology. And we have a bunch of tools that we're going to be using to create that watershed. The first one that we are going to use is the fill tool. And something important to remember with ArcGIS is it tells you exactly what it needs. So the first thing it's asking you for is the input surface raster. If you're not sure what it is, there's usually an eye, and you can click on that and you'll get a little pop-up. In this case, our input surface raster is our DEM. So we talked about what the fill command does in class, and we're just going to say fill, and I'm going to change the name to fill DEM. And this is good. It's throwing it in a geodatabase. So it basically puts all the files together under one sort of heading. And I am going to say run. And it's going to tell me it's running. It's going to take its time. It's going to be thinking. And it's actually going to run this for the entire DEM file, and that's okay. We could clip something sooner to our watershed outline, but we might see differences between what ArcGIS says is our outline versus stream stats. And so I want to keep all of that information while I have it. So I'm going to pause this until this completes. Oh, looks like it's going. Okay, so it's finding those sinks, it's filling them. And it's working hard. And as soon as it completes, you're actually going to get the file popping up over here on the left. So I'm going to pause this and I'll resume when it has completed. All right, we're back. My fill has completed, and I just want to direct you over here to the left and explain a couple different things about ArcGIS. For one, you can make one of these layers disappear just by unchecking it. You're turning it on or you're turning it off. And in this case, fill DEM is telling you the range of the values that it's showing. It's telling you the range of that elevation data from -1.1 to 626.46. If I want to change the color, I can click on that color bar and I can make it something different. And it will update, which is pretty cool. We'll talk about some of the other features of this when we visualize some of our other data sets. But I am done with my DEM, so I am actually going to right-click on it, and I'm going to say remove and get it out of there. I have filled it, and I want to use the fill DEM command moving forward. I want to use the fill DEM going forward. The other important thing I want to point out here is that the order that things are displayed is the order that they are layered. So if you ever can't see something, chances are you just need to pull down that layer. And to do that, I just select the layer and just grab it and move it up or down. So remember that order is dictated, that order dictates what you see. Let's run our next command. Over in geoprocessing, I'm going to go back to my toolbox. And the next tool I'm going to run is the flow direction raster. And we talked about this in class. I'm going to call it flow direction. I don't need other information. We're going to use a D8 flow direction type for this particular analysis, but there is such a thing as MFD, multi-flow direction, or D infinity, where the flow direction is in any of infinity directions. D8 is still the standard, so that's what we're going to use, and I'm going to say run. So my flow direction algorithm has completed, and there's a couple things I want to point out to you. If you look over on the left in the contents, you're going to notice that you have only 8 values, indicating the 8 directions that water can move. Each of these numbers means a specific direction. You don't need to know that, but it is sort of cool to see. But by itself, the flow direction algorithm doesn't tell us a lot. So again, I'm going to go back, and the next step is flow accumulation. I am going to grab it says flow direction raster. So I'm going to grab my flow direction raster. I am going to name it just flow ACC. MATLAB also gets angry if the file name is too long, but it will yell at you for this. I'm going to keep the data type as a float, which is just means it's a number with decimals. And my flow direction is still D8. Here I could change this to D infinity. I'm going to say run and let it do its work. All right, when your analysis finishes for flow accumulation, you should see something weird. You should see a mostly black surface. So this is because the flow accumulation raster is telling you the number of cells flowing to a single point. It means that we have to visualize this in a slightly different way. So I'm going to click on this color bar over here. And I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to change to a color bar that has a lot of variation. I'm going to turn off the flow direction. For now, I actually really don't need the flow direction, but I'm going to leave it there. And under stretch type, I'm going to go to standard deviation. This gives us a much better way to visualize what is happening in the flow accumulation. As soon as you see this, you should start to see rivers. So if I zoom in again, this is telling me the number of cells draining to a single point. If I click this point, it's giving me the watershed, so let's turn off the watershed. If I click this point, it's telling me there are 942,000, we got there eventually, 669 cells draining to this point. This is telling you essentially where your river would be based on the DEM, which is sort of useful. And I'm going to zoom back out and I'm going to turn back on my watershed outline. You should see something similar to the National Hydrography dataset when we load that. So I'm going to zoom in here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here on my watershed outlet. I'm going to turn off my watershed outline. I want this point, this outlet point, to be exactly over my quote unquote river, aka where my flow accumulation is high. This is telling me where water is concentrated in my landscape, which is my river. If it is not immediately over the darker part of this flow accumulation, you are going to use the edit tool. So I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to select my outlet feature over here. And on the edit menu, I'm going to say modify. And I need to move it. So I'm going to click on move. I'm going to click on my point. And then I can literally just drag it up to that point. When I've done that, I can say finish. And then the other important thing with the edit menu is to say save. So telling it save, keep that value there. When I've done that, I can close the modify features. I can zoom back out. And now my watershed outlet is exactly where I want it to be. So the last step in watershed delineation is to click on watershed. It asks me for my flow direction raster. It asks me for my feature or pour point data, which is my outlet. The field doesn't really matter. And again, I'm going to name this watershed. I'm going to say run. And it's going to make a watershed. And I'll be right back when this finishes. All right, my watershed is complete. I have a watershed and it is shown in black. And what you should notice, and this is okay, is that the area of the watershed is slightly different. This is because StreamStats is using a slightly different data set than we are using here. So you have completed your watershed outline. What I ask for is a screenshot of your watershed outline, and figures that you might eventually want to make might include your watershed outline with the DEM, and they might include comparing your watershed outline from StreamStats and your watershed as delineated from the USGS DEM data. So good job, you delineated a watershed.